Well, we got some pretty crazy news, something that I was not expecting. I think many of you guys probably weren't expecting. Not really sure how this happened, especially after their poor performance, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But the LA Galaxy have re-signed head coach Greg Vanney, and I guess invest in soccer operations team is the announcement LA Galaxy just recently made. The 2024 reigning MLS Cup champion LA Galaxy today announced that the club has signed head coach Greg Vanney to a multi-year contract extension. Absolutely crazy. The LA Galaxy have also invested in growing the club's soccer operations staff. The Galaxy have hired Ravi Ramini to a new role, director of quantitative analysis. Additionally, the club has promoted Vitor Gomez Pereira, Jr., known as Juninho, to a senior advisor to the general manager, and Zach Merchetti to Director of Team Administration and Player Care. This is just absolutely crazy. I'm not going to lie to you. We're going to get into this, but before we do, guys, make sure you like the stream down below, share with a friend, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also consider being a member for only $2.99 a month. You get access to members-only streams. All your questions will be prioritized, and also any comments on videos. But I want to get your guys' reaction. What do you guys think about Greg Vanney getting an extension? I mean, we are definitely going to break down how bad the Galaxy season has been, and keep in mind that El Trafico is this coming Saturday or Sunday, and you extend him before that, which they probably will lose. I don't understand. I don't understand. Robbie says, "What are the Galaxy thinking?" Conor says, emergency live stream, like, bro, aren't you supposed to be in a work meeting? Maybe this is work, bro. Mr. says, hi, Will. I can only assume Carson have written off this season by extending Vanney. Cringe says, hey, Will. Carlos says, this is outrageous. El Bigot says, what in the hell? Chengo says, have faith. Cringe says, honestly, I think it's fine. I mean, this guy, they only have 3 points. 3 points this year. I've done a video a couple weeks ago talking about this by myself, talking about the Galaxy struggles in 2024 or 2025, excuse me, and how even with injuries, this team has completely underperformed in 2025. Yes, Ricky Puig is out. We understand this. He's the best player on the team. He's the MVP of the team, probably MVP of the league when you take into account how much the team has fallen off without him. But this team is not so talentless that they can't win a game through 13 matches of the season. They have 3 points in 13 games. 3 points in 13 matches this season in 2025. The reigning MLS Cup champions. They have the worst start in MLS history. This is the worst start through 13 games in Major League Soccer history in the 30 years of the existence of the league. Greg Vanney was going to be out of contract at the end of the 2025 season. He did not have a contract through this year. He did not have a contract. The Galaxy could have walked away from him cleanly. No buyout, no nothing. Could have left him, fired him early, had to pay the remaining 6 months of his salary if they wanted to this summer. Maybe try to get into the market for Jim Curtin or maybe an international coach. They could have walked away clean. A lot of managers, I want to point this out. A lot of teams will not fire their managers because they don't want to pay their salary for 2 or 3 years when they're not coaching the team. And that's understandable. Okay. Some teams are just cheap. They don't want to do that. It has to get really bad for them to do that. Right. But the Galaxy, this is really bad. Winless through 13 matches, contract over by the end of the 2025 season, out of contract. And your solution is to extend him. You extend a guy who hasn't won a game in 2025. I have never heard of a guy losing 7-0 and getting a contract extension. Have you guys ever heard of that? 7-0. Was up 2-0 against the Philadelphia Union this past Wednesday. Chokes that game away. Loses it 3-2. rewarded with a contract extension. You ever heard that before? D-Life says, honestly, I kind of think he's a good coach that's been dealt a bad hand. But D-Life, think about this. Okay, dealt with bad hand, right? How many coaches in MLS historically have ever been winless in 13 games? Even the worst teams, talent-wise, in the history of this league has never been winless through 13 matches. This is unprecedented of how bad this season has been. And yes, injuries have obviously played a role in that. But that's why no one was expecting the Galaxy to be the best team in the league. But were people expecting the Galaxy to be winless through 13? I surely weren't. I wasn't expecting that. Daly says, you're stupid. He literally won them an MLS Cup and had to sell the most core due to cap issues. It's not Greg. The deal was also... Yeah, but my rebuttal to that is you're saying that those guys they had were so good that the next season, this team is the worst team in MLS history without them. Because I've been doing some digging, looking into other situations historically of teams who have finished first in their league, then the next year getting fired. It is not unprecedented to happen. This has happened. This has happened many times. Claudio Ranieri, Leicester City, won the Premier League 2015-2016. Following season in the Premier League, they struggled. And they sacked him in February of 2017 after winning the league the year before. Leicester City, the underdog of the Premier League, won the Premier League in 2016 or 2015, 2016. The following season, they fired that manager. Antoine Conte won the Premier League with Chelsea in 2016, 2017. The following year, they let him go. The summer. Carlo Ancelotti. Now there's a lot of Chelsea. There's a lot of Chelsea firings on here. Carlo Ancelotti, 2010, 2011. Pretty sure that Jose Mourinho, 2014, 2015, won the Premier League, fired in 2015, 2016 because they completely fell off. Completely fell off. Now, if Greg Vanney had 3 wins this year, right? If they were just like below the playoff line, maybe 10th or 11th place, fine, I understand. It's a tough season. But this guy has not won a game the whole entire season. There is no excuse anyone can give me that would say that that's okay, that any team in Major League Soccer has no wins through 13 matches. I don't care what players are out. You can win a game in 13 matches. And the problem is that the Galaxy will probably lose to LAFC this weekend in El Tráfico, which we will be doing a live stream for, by the way. They will probably lose that game too, which will bring them to 0, 3, and 14, if I got the order right. Winless, though. Winless through 14 games. 3 points still. Now, Ricky Puig will probably come back at some point this season, which I talked to with Kevin Baxter about, of the LA Times, just because they're going to want to get his feet wet. They don't want to just throw him into the season next year without playing any games. They want to give him a little bit of time to recover and just reacclimate to playing. But he's not going to save the season. Like, the team is I would say there's no way in hell this team is making the playoffs. I mean, they don't have a win, and they're currently, as it stands, and keep in mind, St. Louis City SC is absolutely horrible. They're not a good team at all. They're 8 points behind the 14th place team in the Western Conference. They're 13 points behind the 9th place team to be in the play-in tournament, or the play-in game in the playoffs for the MLS Cup playoffs. They're 13 points behind them, FC Dallas. And they're 24 points out of first place. There's just absolutely no way this is justifiable to give this guy an extension. And look, I understand he won an MLS Cup last year, but you can't hold on to the past. You got to look at what's happening in the present and how bad things are currently. Let's get to some more comments. LA Native says the last curse of Klein era continues. Michael says can't just talk it up to injuries or losing players. They should at least have one win. not concede 10 shots in 2 games. Exactly. And keep in mind, guys, this is another thing we got to point out. This is the first team in the history of the league. This is just the worst team in MLS history, by the way. Statistically, it is. This is the first team in MLS history to lose a game to a team who didn't have a shot. The first team in MLS history not have a shot on goal, not have a shot in the entire 90 minutes. This team lost to a team who did not have a shot. Sporting Kansas City. Why do you care about the Galaxy and what they do if you're not a supporter? I cover the league. We talk about what's going on in the league. Obviously, if the team who just won MLS Cup is winless through 13 matches and then gives their coach a contract extension, I'd say it's pretty relevant. There's no bad hand dealt. He's just a terrible coach. If Tata was fine with Messi being gone, injured, Vanney should be equally fine without Push. And that's another important point. Last year during Copa America, Inter Miami had like 5 starters out. Okay. 5 starters out. And they were unbeaten in that run. 8 games unbeaten during the summer when Suarez was out, when Messi was out, when Diego Gomez was out, Matias Rojas was out. Inter Miami were unbeaten during that run with all those players out. Unbeaten. Greg Vanney is winless. Daly says MLS has no pro rel. Stupid argument. Mod is way different. Okay, but I don't understand what you're trying. So you should be okay with being winless? Wade says, I think I'd be upset if my team fired my coach 13 games after winning Cup. Extending him is a bit much, maybe. Well, and that's another point, right? If they wanted to give him the rest of the year, okay, because he's out of contract. But you're essentially telling Greg, hey, Greg, you lost every game this year, or you haven't won any games this year. That's okay. We're going to give you an extension. Like, what is Will Kuntz thinking? What is he thinking, honestly? Now, I don't know if he's the only person involved signing off on this at AEG. Maybe Dan Beckerman is also the person who gave the green light to this, but I don't understand what Will Kuntz is thinking. Hi, Will. Who would you have brought in instead? Curtin? Yeah, I mean, Jim Curtin would have been a great replacement for Greg Vanney. Maybe someone else like Tata Martino, maybe give him a call up. Maybe just broaden your search. Broaden your search. And just, I mean, maybe even bring in an outside the box hire, maybe Matias Almeida. He just won, I think he won the Greek League like 2 or 3 times. He obviously has some experience in MLS. I know it's with San Jose. It wasn't necessarily the best, but I think that's more about where he was at. This is a team that is just ready to win. This team is ready. They have Gabriel Peck was on pace to be the MLS record outgoing transfer. Gabriel Peck was. And they have absolutely just demolished his value. He's got 1 goal all season. He was probably going to be sold for closer to $30 million. Now I think they'd be lucky to get maybe 15 to 16 million for Gabriel Peck. I think Jim Curtin would have been very interested in this job. I think he would have been very interested in this job. There's a lot of people that you could have hired that would be better than what Greg Vanney is doing. Hell, even now, this would be crazy. You know, Bob Bradley would be better than Greg Vanney. Just a shame that you're rewarding mediocrity. Jonathan says, write the year off. They'll be fine. Butterdog says, LA Galaxy manager renewing is mad. You're telling me. LA Native says, Greg Vanney also has front office authority, so the roster is on him too. I think he did originally, but they've given more of the roster building to Will Kuntz. Will Kuntz pretty much has the final say over everything when it comes to the roster. Xavier says, who would they replace him with? We kind of talked about that. Hockey says, absolutely demented move. They should open relegation just so that the Galaxy can go to USL and remain there. Jay says, this doesn't mean that there's still a chance that he might get fired, though, right? Yeah, I mean, he's not getting fired. They just extended him. I mean, they wouldn't give him a 3-year deal extension, whatever it is, 3-4 year deal, and then just fire him later and pay him that money. That's just not going to happen. Even in the Galaxy's worst years, they always find a way to beat LAFC. I'm thinking they get their first win this weekend. But what if they don't? What if they lose and then they're winless through 14 games, and you just lost to your biggest rival at home, and you just extended a coach who's mediocre? Wouldn't be good. How long is the extension? I don't know the exact length of it, but I would assume it's probably 2 to 3 years. Or 3 to 4 years, excuse me. His agent dropped the ball in the offseason. The Galaxy had their upper hand after seeing these 13 games. Dumb move by the team. Yeah, they had all the momentum. LA Galaxy, or the leverage, excuse me, all the leverage. Your team is winless through 13, and the MLS Cup shine has wore off. Yeah, they had all the leverage. Didn't have to do anything. Butterdog says, surprised he wasn't sacked earlier. I'm just surprised when we were talking about how bad the Galaxy had been this year. I was expecting to have an LA Galaxy fires Greg Vanney live stream, especially if they're winless. Not a Greg Vanney extension stream. And what really doesn't make sense to me is, what does the Galaxy gain from doing this now? What does the Galaxy gain from signing a coach who has a stench on him because he hasn't won any games this year in 20? It's not about what you did in the past. It's about what you're doing now. Why do you think Carlo Ancelotti was forced out of Madrid? It's not because he won a Champions League last year. It's because of him not winning the league or the Champions League in 2025. Why did you need to extend him now? Why not wait until after if you were going to keep him all year? Okay, like I said, fine. Why not wait until the end of the season and see how he rebounds? See what the positioning is in what they finish in the table by the end of the season. Then determine if you want to keep him around. Who's going to hire him? Who's going to be clamoring to hire a guy who has the worst historical start in MLS history? That current roster is a disaster. Let's be realistic. This current roster, they still have Joseph Paintsel. They still have Gabriel Peck. I mean, they're the core starters. Maya Yoshida. Now, Maya Yoshida has regressed this year, but whose fault was that to resign him? Whose fault was that to resign him? Now, Will Kuntz is obviously calling the shots, but Greg Vanney has input. Greg Vanney is coordinating with Will Kuntz on who to keep, who to let go, and what roster moves to make. I think the Royce move was absolutely terrible, was the root cause of their disaster, the current roster situation. This extension is another example of terrible front office thinking and was the root. Jonathan Miranda says, he won the cup with a proper team. Let the guy come back, actually go into the market. He's earned at least a year. So you're saying that there should be no accountability for being winless through 13 matches, 3 points in the league. There should be no accountability. Everything's good. Guys, make sure if you haven't already, we got 17 likes. Make sure you like the stream down below. We have 60 of you in here. Let's get to 50 likes. Smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for all my videos, emergency live streams like this. When all this breaking news happens in Major League Soccer, I'm your go-to guy to keep you up to date, give you my opinion on what's going on in MLS, and also hit the little bell notification so you never miss any of my videos. Mr. Mister says, this makes a big argument for pro rel. As things stands, it shows that you can absolutely suck and there's no consequence. Exactly. This right here is where the pro rel backers really thrive, and their argument makes a lot of sense. Because what consequence do the Galaxy have this year for being absolutely terrible, abysmal? 3 points, 2025, 13 games. What are the consequences? There are no consequences. It looks like people are getting rewarded for mediocrity. An extension for 3 points is absolutely crazy. Montreal fired their coach earlier in the season after a bad start. Sporting Kansas City fired their coach Peter Vermees after he was winless through like 5 or 6 games. But Greg Vanney's winless through 13 and gets a contract extension. Kurt Onalfo got fired in 2017 when he had 2 wins. He had a better start than what Greg Vanney did. They canned him, obviously replaced him with Ziggy Schmidt, but he got fired after his first season as a head coach. He didn't even have a chance to really prove himself. Now, look, I'm not going to defend Kurt Onalfo. Kurt Onalfo was a bad manager. Let's not get it twisted. He was not good. But what I'm saying is that he was in his first year with this team, and he didn't even get this long of a leash. He didn't even get this long of a leash. He got fired in his first season through like 10 or 11 games. Wade says, aside from Ricky Puig, does anybody have a list of players they lost from last year's Cup-winning roster? I know Joveljic is gone. They lost Joveljic, Marky Delgado. They lost Gaston Brugman. And let's see who else they lost. I feel like that's... Oh, and they traded Jalen Neal. I mean, they really didn't lose anything too crazy. Now, obviously, Brugman was the MVP of the MLS Cup, but Joveljic was good between Peck and Paintsel and behind Puig, but he hasn't really been that special with Sporting Kansas City. I think he was a product of his environment and the talent around him, the service he got. He hasn't been that good for Sporting Kansas City. Dejan Joveljic has not. So this team is not that bad. Like I said, this team should have at least won 3-4 games. No one's saying they should be in first place. And I want to point this out too. Vancouver, right? The Whitecaps. I'm sure most of you know that the Whitecaps are the best team in Major League Soccer in 2025. 27 points this year, top of the leaderboard, top of the table in the entire league. Their best player, Ryan Gauld, has been out almost the entire season. He is the Ricky Puig of their team. And they've only lost 1 game this season. They've only lost 1 game this season. And their best player has been out the entire year. The only difference between the Vancouver Whitecaps in 2024 and 2025 is that they have a new coach. That's the only difference. Same roster, essentially, minus their best player because he's injured. And they're the best team in the league. It would be very hard to convince me that a good manager wouldn't have been able to at least get 3 to 4 wins with this team right now. I mean, does anyone really believe that the Galaxy, besides LAFC fans, because they definitely do, right? Does anyone really believe the Galaxy are so bad, so talentless, so injured, that they would lose to a 10th place New York Red Bulls 7-0? Does anybody believe that? That's how bad they are? I just don't see how that's... I mean, 7-0 games don't happen often, but definitely not to a bad team. Jay says Ancelotti wasn't forced out of Madrid. He announced he was leaving a year ago. They did not want him back. Guillermo Almada could be a better option due to him doing a lot with little or lesser squad depth and using youngster. Just saying. Mr. says, a member of the channel says, I know he won MLS Cup last season, but this season has been pathetic. Mr. You live in Great Britain, the UK. You tell me any manager in Europe who wins the league and then the following year is winless through 13 and keeps their job. You tell me. Anybody in the chat, give me an example of one manager outside of Major League Soccer who that hasn't happened either, who has won MLS Cup, the following season completely fell apart and their manager kept their job. Please, I'm all ears. I'm all eyes because I'll read it. Michael says, to me, it seems like management is blaming the players on the field, not the coach. It definitely doesn't help if he loses the locker room. I think he might have. Edward Lewis says, Sporting Kansas City signed Vermees to a multi-year extension and then fired him 5 games in. I think they signed him last year. I don't think they signed him to an extension this season. I think it was last year. Conor says, I feel bad for Mears, left Columbus to be with family and then having a bad team. Year should have stayed in Columbus, but I get it. Well, he probably wanted to help the Galaxy, maybe even repeat. And he wasn't really supposed to be the starting striker for the Galaxy. He was supposed to be a bridge guy for the young Matias Nascimento striker from Brazil. He just hasn't panned out. He wasn't good. He hasn't been the striker they thought he could be, and he's been injured so much. So just some bad. I mean, it is bad signings too. I don't want to be misleading and say that, that this is all Greg Vanney, but you have to find ways to win. You have to find a way to get the best results with what you have. To reach the playoff threshold, typically around 45 points, the Galaxy would need to earn approximately 41 points over their remaining 21 games, averaging nearly 2 points per game. Yeah, they'd have to go on like some crazy win streak in order to make the playoffs. Like maybe like unbeaten in like 12, maybe 8-9 wins. I love my Galaxy, but without Ricky, we're a joke, Rigby says. Let's see. Synth the Squatch says the Carson Galaxy are a poverty club. Elias says Greg Vanney's winning percentage is 49.7, placing him third in the mid-range of current MLS coaches. Yeah, no, his MLS record isn't bad, and he's got 2 MLS Cups, but he's just not performing. He's not. When you're winless through 13, it doesn't matter about what you've done in the past. It's about what you've done now. Would you keep a striker who won the Golden Boot last year, scored 30 goals? Maybe he's a little older, 32 years old. Let's say he scored 25 goals last year. The striker did. And then this year, through 20 matches, he has no goals. None. 0. Would you keep that striker going into 2026? You have the option to let him go. Won the Golden Boot in 2024, 25 goals. 2025, he scored no goals through 20 matches. Are you keeping that guy in 2026? Vancouver are pretenders. They haven't beaten any decent teams yet. I mean, they've beaten some. I mean, they beat Miami in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Exactly. Daly says you're not factoring in 6 travel, and it was a away match. You talking about the Red Bulls game? Michael says Vancouver beat Miami twice. Elias says on stats, Greg Vanney is mid and should not be extended. I agree. Let's see. Mr. says maybe Pep Guardiola just because it's Pep Guardiola, but even then it'd be a maybe. And even he wasn't winless through 13 matches. Now they had a very bad run towards like the middle of the season, or towards the middle, I'd say. But he wasn't winless through 13 matches. Anthony Franco says it's both players and managers, but you can't fire the players, especially in MLS, because there's just they don't really promote roster movement like that. But you can fire the manager and see if they can get better results with a new guy leading the helm. Anthony says they needed to look at their academy players. Yeah, the academy's been a joke. Gomez says LAFC won, lost good starters that helped us win our first title, but we kept going on to the finals, granted only to lose them. I don't think the depth is there for Carson this year. Not really. The depth isn't great, but we're not rationalizing them not being first place. We're talking about them not having a win this year. We're not saying okay, the Galaxy just missed out on the playoffs. It was a tough season. They finished 10th place. They were just a couple points out. Really wasn't their year. We're not saying that. We're not even having that discussion. We're talking about winless through 13 matches. I could understand if they were fighting for a playoff spot and they just missed out. I mean, this is a worse start than their 2020. This will probably end up being a worse season than their 2023 season before Klein was fired and Will Kuntz took over. In 2023, the LA Galaxy I know that they finished pretty low in the table. They were 26th in the league and 13th in the Western Conference. They had 36 points. The LA Galaxy had 36 points in 2023, which was a terrible season where a lot of fans wanted Greg Vanney fired then as well. And like I mentioned, Chris Klein was fired. 36 points. I don't think they get anywhere close to that this year. I don't even know if they get 20 points. So in that season, they made radical changes. They signed Peck. They signed Paintsel. They made Ricky Puig a DP. They signed Mickey Amane in 2024. Mayoshita was a late signing in 2023. But after the season, they made radical changes to the roster. And they went from 36 points to, I want to say, 65 in 2024. Let me just check and make sure. They were second in the conference and fourth overall in the league. Let's see. Where is it at? League table. 64 points. Okay, 64 points. They went from 36 points to 64 points to 3 points. I just don't know how you keep them. Let's see. We'll get some more comments. Carlos says maybe they agreed on this for weeks now. They were just waiting for a win to announce it. But if they lose on Sunday without this being announced, the calls for his head would have become deafening. Yeah, but the problem is that if they lose on Sunday, first of all, I honestly would love to know if any Galaxy fan is okay with this extension. I don't see how you could be. But who would be okay with it after losing the El Trafico match? Then you would be winless in 14. Gomez Jr. says, what are the chances the 2/3 of DPs are available on Sunday? I don't know. Well, obviously, Puig isn't playing, but I don't know if Peck and Paintsel are going to play. Maybe they do. Maybe one of them do. I'm not sure what their injury status is at the moment. Okay, so Jay says they're both ready to play. Okay, cool. I mean, that should help. And if you lose with them, then it hurts your case even more, though, right? Michael says, sounds like you were describing Suarez. Hey, you're onto something. Butterdog says Miami is not decent anymore. Most soccer guy says if he was a coach in Europe, he would have been fired 5 games ago. Why do we continue to not progress in the game here? There are plenty of free agent coaches to pick from, especially with it being LA. And that's another great point. They would have a plethora of options. They could pick any coach nearly that they wanted. They're willing to spend for, obviously. Jim Curtin with this team would absolutely cook. And here's the problem, too. This is something that needs to be addressed. LAFC announced that Steve Strundalo is leaving after the 2025 season. They're going to be in the hunt for a new coach. LAFC. You could have had a leg up on LAFC to get to get Jim Curtin by firing Greg Vanney now. So now LAFC are in the driver's seat to get Jim Curtin, who is a proven MLS coach, who has gotten more with less, who has taken an underdog Philadelphia Union team. And yes, they are an underdog. They have good players on that team that he helped develop to an MLS Cup final and barely lost to LAFC. Imagine what he'll be able to do with a team that will give him the resources and will spend to build a good MLS club. You could have had him. Vanney, sell Marquis Delgado and Brugman and keep Fagundes bench guy and put him up as a captain. Wow, stop your horsemen. What a joke. Yeah, by the way, Diego Fagundes is absolutely terrible. D-Live says, didn't they play the Red Bulls without Peck, Puig, or Paintsel? That's a huge hit for the team. No, Peck and Paintsel actually got hurt in that match, if I'm not mistaken. Peck and Paintsel didn't play against the Union on Wednesday. And they lost. They were up 2-0 and ended up losing 3-2. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you like the stream down below. It helps us out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're like 30 subscribers away from 6,700. We're trying to hit 7K by the end of this month. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the little bell notification so you never miss any of my videos or live streams. And also check out becoming a member of the channel. There's a link in the description below. Only $2.99 a month. You get all your questions read. There's a members only live stream once a month where I answer all your questions. And also you can play FIFA with me and probably embarrass me because I'm not that good at it. Otto says, had this extension not happened, who would replace Vanney realistically? Yeah, Robbie Keane's another good shout too. I don't know why I didn't mention that earlier. Robbie Keane, definitely. And I saw some LA Galaxy fans that were wanting Robbie Keane to potentially be the guy to take over. Daniel says, LAFC fan here, Vanney in. Okay, so I want to ask you guys, if you were the LA Galaxy president, general manager, whatever the title is, making the decision, I want you guys to comment down below, yes or no. Would you have extended Greg Vanney after what he's done this season? Would you have extended Greg Vanney after being winless through 13 games in the MLS regular season? Let me know down below. I want to know what you guys think. Okay, Carlos says no. I just don't know. I really don't know how anybody would say yes, but I'm curious. Jay says yes. Jay must be an LAFC fan. LA Galaxy says no. Elias says fired. No. Devive says yes. Wade says hell effing no. Otto says Vanney out. Rigby says hell no. So let me ask you this question. Would you, after Greg Vanney lost to the Union to go winless through 13, after being up 2-0, would you have fired Greg Vanney after that match? Before El Tráfico, would you have fired Greg Vanney after being winless through 13 matches? Yes or no? $7-0 would have been the release night. Rigby says he would have fired Greg Vanney after being winless through 13 matches. Wade says he should have been fired in week 9. Elias says fired, yes. Luke says gone. I can't disagree. I really don't know how Greg Vanney, I'm about to wrap this up because I actually got to go get some lunch with my wife, but I don't understand. This is my final thoughts. I don't understand how Greg Vanney got rewarded for a mediocre performance through the first 13 games of the MLS regular season. He's winless through 13. They have 3 points. They haven't even got a bunch of draws. They have way more losses than they do draws. The team just looks flat. They're not scoring goals. They're conceding too many goals. They don't have any flexibility to really sign anybody this summer. It's just it's a shit show, if we're being honest. It's a shit show for the Galaxy right now. They're going to play the LAFC and El Tráfico this weekend, which we'll do a live stream for. They'll probably end up losing this game. And I'm going to be very curious to see how the LA Galaxy fans react to a loss in El Tráfico if they do, and then extending Greg Vanney right before that game happened. But this is not the move I would have made. I think this caught a lot of people off guard. It really doesn't make any sense. We'll see what happens for the rest of the season with LA Galaxy, but it's not looking good. And, I appreciate all you guys tuning in to watch the stream. We got a new member of the channel. I'm sorry if I pronounce it right. It's LB God. I know that you're a friend of Danny, if I'm not mistaken, Solana. I appreciate you for being a new member of the channel. Appreciate you for stopping by and joining us for this emergency live stream. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. It means the world to me. Glad that I can give you guys MLS content that you enjoy. Be on the lookout for the live stream on Sunday. Appreciate you all for tuning in. Until next time, guys, I will see you all soon.